It is Tuesday night. I'm finding it harder and harder to get started on a game. I guess I officially have. I dealt out the cards. I'm up to here in the diplomacy phase, and I set up the treasures and whatnot, which means I've actually started in the sequence of play. But yeah, it is definitely more difficult to get myself going, especially with these multiplayer CDG type things, and maybe CDGs in general. Just really kind of feeling negative to it. Part of it, though, is the complexity of this game, where I'm feeling like, and the same with Tanto Monto or whatever, but I'm feeling this sort of, I have no idea what I'm trying to do. Read the rules, but there's so many fucking options open for me to do various things, and I have to process the cards, and this and that. And I suspect to some extent I felt this in Here I Stand when I first played it, but I was so excited. CDGs, weren't new to me, but I was new to liking them at that point. I had played a couple of the original ones early on, and now I don't know what I am about them. I find the decision-making process within the cards to be particularly problematic. But this series is one where you're like, you have many ways to get victory points. Many paths to victory, which I fucking hate. And all those different options mean I'm diving into diplomacy. And actually the designer talks about this. Says he tried to make it easier, but I just have no idea what I want to do and everything. There's just so many choices of what to play around with. This, I wasn't sure where it got introduced. This does not have the headline events phase, which is, I'm assuming, taken from Twilight Struggle. I think I've seen it in other, well, I know I've seen it in other CDGs. I'm pretty sure it was in Clash of Sovereigns. I don't know if it showed up in Clash of Monarchs before that, but it's like this really weird thing when it doesn't impact the order of play, which it doesn't in Tanto Monta. And it's kind of cool. Here we just have a fixed order of play. I don't remember what it is. I'm sure it's in the sequence there. Ottomans are first. Oh no, it's all over the fucking Ottomans, Spain, England. Yeah, okay. So the Ottomans go first and we go around, which is fine. Yeah. Having my difficulties. I'm rereading the diplomacy section. See if there's anything I want to do, but I've got to kind of do that in conjunction with looking at my cards and just, do I want to declare war? What the hell? One thing I really like about EU, look, after you play it a couple of times, you may come up with, clever stratagems and ways of, manipulating the game. In fact, actually, one time somebody stepped into it and just started doing things, and I was just kind of like absolutely astounded that, I don't know how well it worked for them, but they didn't let themselves be driven by the events, etc. But in EU, you can just kind of let the events happen, and you react to them, and you do shit on them. Here, you kind of have to walk in with a strategy. Starting to consider the initial situation, what's going on. First of all, over here we have a couple of wars in play. England and France are at war. There doesn't appear to be anything that prevents you from negotiating an end of the war, which is, no, not that weird. Sitting in the rules, at least I can't find anything, and I don't remember anything. I didn't read the rules as carefully as I usually do, and Obviously, I didn't do the second reading through, but I'm not seeing any like first turn restrictions or anything like that. And there's also one between the Spanish and the Ottomans. So some of these games have, you can't go to peace with someone. This one does have one. Once England and Spain are at war, they can't go to peace, I believe. Although I didn't see that anywhere when I looked for restrictions, so I may have missed restrictions elsewhere. We got it. I'm in diplomacy there. This is on the marriages. Maybe there's a set of restrictions here. Here, war between England and Spain has its own special rules, which is what it has there. The bottom right of the diplomatic status displays a list of occurrences that trigger a state of war. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But I did start to decide, okay, look, Philip and Elizabeth, they're initially betrothed, but you don't have to actually formalize that. But if you don't, Spain pays a penalty. France gets a bonus for making it. Might as well go ahead with it. But then I realized, okay, Spain's starting to think about, hey, I got the Ottomans as a problem right now. If possible, I'd love to get the Holy Roman Empire in on that. And they've already chosen their home card that they're not going to keep. Everyone else is down to one. Except I think the Ottomans, they're allowed to have two. But the Holy Roman Empire, I realized, hasn't done something that they're supposed to do. And I moved the counters, there's my clip. I moved the counters from here for the artists and whatnot up here. I'm not really thrilled about it. I don't know if that's like, I kind of like having the artists and scientists in my pool, like in my force pool, so I can look at them and consider them more easily. But since they're spaces, I feel like I have to deal with that. But yeah, the Holy Roman Empire has to make a decision before the game actually starts as to which of the three positions they're going to take in terms of, and it's hidden from everyone, but I may mark it on there rather than use a piece of paper to write it down on or something. And I think I'm allowed to look at my cards before I make this decision. Let me check that. But I'm kind of thinking I'll just roll a die unless something significant turns my decision here, because it's really something that kind of is going to kind of determine a lot of the flow of the game. If I'm supporting the Protestants specifically, that means something. But on the other hand, if I'm doing it too obviously, that's going to trigger a, hey, we're pretty sure what you're up to. I get to make that choice during spring deployment of the first turn, not before, well after looking at the cards, okay? After negotiations happen, which is kind of cool because Spain's opening up an offer to me, hey, do you want to attack the Ottomans? So I look up the Holy Roman Empire, and they get points on a turn-by-turn basis for, I think it's Vienna, Prague, and Budapest. They get a point each turn for that. And what I might want to do is support the Spaniards there and support the Protestants in the religious wars. The reason I'm looking at the Protestants is I'm looking at, if we could get the Protestant power up high enough, there are a lot of victory points there. You gotta look at the victory points though, because it might be that if I'm going for an early victory, it might make sense to support the Catholics because I'd get 5 extra points right now. Of course, I'm so far behind on points. I'm kind of thinking that I have to go for the long game. Anyway, I'll look at cards, make that kind of decision and everything. I know I'm giving you a lot more of like the struggles with the beginning of the game type thing, you know, but it's really there. It's really heavily there. It feels like you kind of have to define what your initial to play this game well. And honestly, here I stand as well. You really kind of, and I don't know as much with Tanto Monta. I feel kind of railroaded more in Tanto Monta than I do in this or in Here I Stand. So that could be one of the negatives of that game, is it kind of really pushed. Now, it made it easier, though. It made it easier to jump into. Which, since everything else in the game makes it harder. The viewer mentioned, I don't think I mentioned this during the setup, because I hadn't dealt out the cards yet, was that the less cards you have in your hand, the easier the game becomes. And this is definitely true. Both Tanto Monta and Time of Wars give you huge hands of cards. This is closer to the Here I Stand card level. I had the dice out for everyone, but pretty much everyone got 4 cards plus their home card. That means they don't have a lot of decisions to make as to points to use and whatever. It also means the turns are a little shorter. Of course, it also means that less happens. So, you know, there's kind of a, I don't know how I feel about that side of things. Like sometimes I in these games, I feel like I can't do as much as historically was done or attempted in the games because of the limitations of the cards. I didn't really feel that in Tanto Monta, but it means that the turns are going to go a little quicker, especially since when you're holding like 6 or more cards in your hand. And in Time of Wars, it went up to like 10 or 12. that one was extreme. But Tanto Monta had quite a few. There's so many different actions that you're going to take over the course of the entire turn that it's like, that first card is really hard to decide on. And now I'm looking at these little hands and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do a hell of a lot. Where that may be a problem is sieges. What it meant in Tanto Monta with the larger hands was that I could pretty much assure that if I started a siege early in a turn, I could complete it by the end of the turn. I'm not as certain here. I have to decide with the with the Holy Roman Empire home card. They have this HRE Intercession, which it's a big 5-point card, and their other home card is also a 5-point card. But the event on this allows me to put an at-war marker, which otherwise is going to cost me 2 points for a war with the Ottomans. Okay. I've agreed to the Spanish proposal, and we're going to ally for whatever that's worth, which ain't much. But this is a weird card. You get 2 extra HRE land units in a home space. You can move an army leader to that space as well, so that would allow me to position myself. I'm thinking I want to get Buddha. Okay, now I can do a spring deployment there, or this isn't going to be much. But yeah, I could do a spring deployment up there, and so that's not a big deal. The 2 extra units and the 2 points for the war, so I'm getting 4 points for this card already. Actually, the 2 HRE land units, I bet you they cost 2 each. Building regulars costs 2 each, yeah. So that's 4, 5, 6. I'm already ahead now. I get this free movement. of a leader, which doesn't really help. Power now at war with the HRE rolls 5 dice, and for each one rolled adds an unrest marker. That doesn't sound like that great a deal. Like, I'm getting 4 points worth of, or I'm getting 6 points worth of card stuff, but potentially a decent amount of unrest. I don't know. But I don't have to decide on this until the deployment phase either. So that I looked up just now. So yeah, I think I'm going to go along with that, and I will probably pay to declare war so I can keep my patronage card. That's more valuable if I look all the way over here. This is why it's so stupid to be here. I've only got one thing I can patronize here, which is a 2, but using my HRE home card, I could take one of the Italians, which would be more, you know, he's better. Which is appealing. I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. And then there's the fucking mercenaries and just all this stuff just hitting you all at once, right off the bat. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the English. Do the English want to go to peace with France? Well, probably. And then, of course, England. England has Elizabeth. Elizabeth is cool because my home card allows me to say, oh, I don't actually want her to marry. Now, I do not want Elizabeth to marry, which means that anybody agreeing to marry her is kind of boned. But this card is a very good card in that if something great falls down there, I could play this and allow the marriage. But at this point in the game, Elizabeth absolutely does not want to end up married. So if this gets played, it'll get played to withdraw from the marriage. That gives a replacement card, but gives a bonus to the person getting it. And I just don't see much value to offering a marriage unless I get something, and nobody in their right mind is going to offer me anything because they know that I'm going to withdraw from it. Unless they have a card that they really want to slip by the English. But each card can only be played for its event once in this game. I don't think that was the case in Tanto Monto, but maybe I was mistaken about that. Which means if you, once per turn, which means if you re-pull a card, I think that's actually stated here. No, I don't know where it was. The rest of my cards don't really give me much. The Belgic Confession might be fun to try to create some more Protestants because I get points off Protestants. And right now, the Netherlands is awfully Catholic. I've got this one, Taxis, Family Couriers. You give a card away to another power, then draw a new card from the deck. I mean, yeah, I got a shitty card here that I would love to give away, but I'm giving away 4 points of cards and an action phase to get whatever's in the deck, which this is about as bad a pair of cards as you can have, but it seems pretty damn iffy. Like, it feels like I'm throwing a lot away on a chance at something that might be better. I do not want to be at war with France. I'll tell you that. I don't know, though. I mean, maybe I do, because there's Scotland up here. I could go whack Scotland. Right? Well, I don't have any leaders for England, which kind of blows. Still might be able to take Edinburgh. Damn. I'm just having a fucking hard time figuring out what I might want to do, what I might not. Honestly, this is the kind of thing that sours me on a game right away. When it's okay if I can't grasp everything about a game. You know, there's no way that I understood EU or La Grande Guerre, or even Here I Stand very well, but I feel like I'm being thrown into this horrible decision-making process right at the beginning and don't even have a really clear idea about what I'm trying to fucking do, right? Other than I'm trying to get points. And, you know, I start looking and I'm like, well, I know I can get points off this stuff. I'm trying to find out what the Enterprise of England is, which I have a big pile of victory point markers for, but I can't remember seeing. And when I look at the special rules for England, and maybe it's in the home card that I haven't drawn yet, like I don't have available to me yet. But, that's marriage. I saw England. Oh no, that's this. When I look at England here, I don't see anything that deals with the Enterprise of England. So I'm like at a loss about what that is. I guess I'll look and see if it's on that home card. I don't know when I get that home card. I don't have it yet. It's a Walsingham card and it covers a number of things, but one, I don't have it, but it doesn't, like it has two options. It's another nice thing. Yes, the home cards have a couple options each, but in Tanto Monta they had more than a couple. Like there were three on some of them, which definitely further hindered me. It's kind of nice not having all the options available, but I have no fucking idea how I get those victory points and how I can expect to get them. Now, obviously, that's a matter of, yeah, if I played it, but here's the problem. I walked away from my last playing of it so unhappy that even though Here I Stand became a game that I replayed a couple of times and then played it opposed a number of times as well, this is one that I just kind of had bad feelings about, you know? And I can see it. I don't feel like I was anywhere near, and again, some of that may be the scripting in Tanto Monta, but I didn't feel like I was anywhere near this up in the air in terms of what the fuck should I do about Tanto Monta. I don't feel like I was anywhere near this up in the air, even in Time of Wars, which I had to struggle with the rules a lot because they've got issues. But and these seem like they're good, except I have no fucking clue what those points are. I can look here and from events. Okay, I guess there are cards that'll just give me points. So I can't really count on them for anything. But yeah, I can't really figure out how I'm gonna get out of this war with France. But I'm just not that sure that France wants the war either. In addition to whatever broad plans you're making, I have the feeling, because I can't do this, right? Not at this point in the game. But I have the feeling that, like in Tanto Monta that I played recently, you kind of have to calculate out what you're going to do with your turn, with your hand of cards, and understand what it's going to generate. I think that neither England nor France really wants this war. I'm just looking at it and I'm like, what is there to really gain for either side? The English would love to take Edinburgh. That gets them another one of these, some more points. Great. But they have no leaders right now, and don't really want to spend their cards on troops particularly and fighting a war. And France is in a position where they also don't have any and could do things not necessarily to help their country, but they could do, you know, they have a couple of artists. They have Latetsu, but he might be better used. He's got a navigation of 2. He might be better used, however that works. And again, I read it. But buying a colony and shipping it over and all that to build up my capabilities, just like in Tanto Monta, you wanna build up your capabilities. This game is less open in the exploration in a lot of ways, but you know, Spain has a lot of territories already, etc. But it is the only way to get treasures other than by capturing them. And I can also do that. You know, I could do some piracy as well, I guess. But again, like, the rules are vague in my head, which is a problem. And I'm facing this, yeah, but I also don't know what the fuck kind of strategy I would have, even if I, like, it feels overwhelming compared to, and I don't know if I just have a fucking mental block on this one, but I'm finding it much harder to proceed than even in Tanto Monta, which I feel like people who liked this felt like it was a step too far. With stuff like that, when in doubt, roll a die. I did an odd even. France and England can't see any reason why they should be at war. So they are going to agree to get rid of it. This is all happening in the negotiations, and then they actually get resolved afterwards. It's not like, you know. So, yeah. Adding to the burden in this game is there are a shit ton of response cards, at least in this initial draw, which are difficult for me. They're difficult for me, certainly in solo play, because I've got to keep track of everybody's response cards and whether or not they want to play them at any given time and whatever. And this was something Time of Wars had as well. Too many response cards made it difficult. But it's also not easy when I'm playing opposed, because I got to be on my toes too much during an opponent's turn. You know, I like to relax, especially in a big multiplayer game, chatter with people, you know, shit like that. Not be focusing on, you know, what kind of special reaction cards I can play. I don't mind in a 2-player game, or a game that's a pure card game, you know, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I probably don't mind reactions in a pure card game. I'm thinking about like multiplayer Magic and stuff like that, where it's okay, but it's something I wouldn't play solo, you know. Come to the major decisions I'm going to make. Peace between France and England, an alliance between Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. But then comes the whole issue with the marriages. Look, we want to continue with this. It's a penalty for France, for Spain. It's a bonus for France, sort of, kind of. It's a good bonus because Philip's a good opportunity for both sides to get a good marriage. So it feels like it's an okay thing to go ahead with. But I think Philip could disagree and not want to do it. However, he has a penalty for not doing it. Okay, so yeah, Elizabeth could try to seek out a better marriage. But he's the best choice, and she's the best choice. And France, again, gets a bonus just for marrying off their royals. So it doesn't feel terrible to do that. But then we come over here, and again, Elizabeth's like, ooh, what will anybody give to marry me? And everybody's like, fickle bitch. Even though they don't know. But I look at the rest of them, and there's only one female available. Crappy Anne of Saxony. Now, she comes with a nice bonus, but it means that everybody's kind of interested in her. Don Carlos is not good at being married. What about William? William has kind of a bonus in that he's recuperable. And I could see that being enough. Now, here's the thing. These two have agreed, but that doesn't mean France has to keep with their agreement. The French player could make an agreement with someone else to make the marriage. Now, I remember there was something about like marriage. I got to look this up. There was something I think about marriages that aren't in the same religion, at least certain ones being problematic. Can't find anything about it in the marriage rules, and maybe it's here. Two different powers may not agree to marry if those two powers are at war and not agreeing to end the war. Okay. I get confused because the blue and the pink feels like the blue and the red of France and England, but the flags are there to indicate that, but I'm just, yeah. It's just my mind not working. Those in the same family can't marry Queen of Scots, no army leader can be part of an agreement. I don't know. I can't find anything. Wait, restriction? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like, the real question is, what would anybody be willing to give up for a good bonus, right? And obviously, look, Elizabeth would be a great marriage bonus for anyone. However, no one's willing to give anything up because the best I'll get, what I'll end up getting, is this jilted, which is like, maybe I get a card, maybe I get some diplomacy, you know? So giving a card draw away would be kind of shitty. Now, Spain might be willing to do it. Giving up my shitty 1 CP Chet. But again, if Spain is like willing to give something, I think I can specify whether it's a treasure or a card. If not, it would automatically be a card, and that, yeah, I don't really want to give that up. Like, I'm gonna at best kind of break even. The thing I'm able to do is force the English to play their home card to evade it. But, you know, the English have to feel like they're getting something better that's worth them playing their home card to evade the marriage, and the French, the marrying power has to feel like they're getting something good, and it just doesn't feel like it's possible. Certainly in solo play, I don't know what kind of offer would be possible. If it's giving up a space or something, it might be worth it. You know, like, let's say England had captured something important in Spain, and then they came to peace or something in the Netherlands, and neither one really wants the situation to maintain. It's not going to be able to stay that way, and it's going to cause a war. It might be worth making a deal to trade that for the marriage alliance. It gives something directly, and it changes the nature of stuff. But overall, I think nobody really wants to marry Elizabeth just because they know that they're not going to get it. And Elizabeth doesn't want to do it because it uses up a very powerful card to prevent it from happening. She cannot afford to get married this early in the game. But for the others, you know, I don't want to give anything away. I just want to, you know, get us both having the points. So the best offer there, I believe, is the William of Orange, Anne of Saxony marriage is possible. I don't know. Like, I could try to marry Leicester and Elizabeth and then refuse it. I don't think I get a jilted roll for that. And again, I wouldn't want to play the card just for the shitty jilted roll. So I will just put these aside and say that's what I'm doing. And so what we get, assuming my batteries haven't run down. By the way, it's kind of weird. There's a couple of at war markers. These may indicate at war and unable to change that have the ally of a major power on them. I don't know what the fuck that means. Those may have something to do with when you're playing in less powers. So Austria and Spain and the HRE are going to ally. And France and England get rid of their at war marker with nothing going on. And that is pretty much the extent of what I'm doing. And yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time explaining, but also, you know, more time trying to figure out how the fuck to get started. And that's going to put me now to declarations of war. So I got to swap batteries. The HRE can declare war at this point, or I could use my home card to fuck around with. But that home card doesn't look like a great deal for me to play. I really don't like the idea of all those unrest markers. I don't really like about this design in general. One of many. But this goes all the way to Here I Stand as well. I gotta now pay for my declaration of war. I don't mind having to pay, but I hate this. I have to throw a card away, essentially, a 3-point card to get for the border reavers that I can't really use for anything, I think. I don't know. You have to have York, Carlisle, or Berwick, or a space in Scotland, or England, France, or a Protestant to get bonuses. It's totally worthless as an event, and it's the cheapest card that I have, so I'm just getting rid of it and set a state of war between the Ottomans and the Holy Roman Empire. The alliance probably doesn't do me a lot of good. It allows moving through each other's spaces, but we're kind of far apart. And I think nobody has anything captured, so I think that's the only things, that we can do here. So we have made it to the spring deployment phase, and I need to rest. This is killing me already. It really is. Before I dig in more, I noticed on BGG I have actually 2 plays of this recorded. I don't think I videoed both of them. I'm assuming, because there's a fair amount of time between them, like May to August, that I came back and gave it another shot, but didn't actually video it. I think. It's hard to tell. Some of the videos were corrupted and had replacements up there and all kind of weird shit going on. All right. So I'm in the spring deployment phase. This is where the home card actually gets chosen. And I'm going to have to work my way through the rules to actually do this. A couple catch-ups here. I missed something. The Mercenaries for Hire if I didn't give them away during diplomacy, they go down to 0. I could have given them to the Spaniards, but I didn't. It's okay. But I really should have. But, you know, maybe in exchange for something, I don't know. And I've started the spring deployment. Treasure Fleet Escorts, I'm putting a galleon out there to help protect my treasures. I don't know how good a thing that's going to be, but I think it means that they have to fight. You know, if a captain goes out there to fight. And this is important because the English and French aren't at war, and they both have captains that they could have put on the board, but now that they're not at war, they don't really need their fleets, so they're going to probably use them for external purposes. And again, I'm gonna kind of relearn the rules as I go, rather than, you know, anything else. Now, other things, English sea captain placement. The English could have used Hawkins as a captain with a 1 rating, but I don't need him. So the French can only use theirs as sea captains. Theirs have a 0 combat. HRE, religious preference, I marked that using a little cube. I was going to use a diplomacy marker, but they're one of these guys, so they actually don't have one. Arriving leaders on this turn choose home card. I indeed chose the patronage card. Move formation from capital. Okay, here's where things get ugly. The Turks moved a huge army to go beat up on the HRE. The HRE can't use their mercenaries, so, like, directly, which is going to not, they're going to get their asses kicked, is basically what's going to happen, as far as I can tell. And Spain's probably not in good shape either, because they don't have a lot of navy. I'm going to handle the rest of the redeployments, but I wanted to jump in because I realized, oh, what about these mercenaries? Could I have used them? Nah, I couldn't. And the restrictions on moving units through sea zones are such that the Spaniards' best move is down to Gibraltar, I think. They could cross these sea zones, except there's enemy... Oh, actually, there's no enemy fleets up here. Hold on. I could slip my way through here to Naples. And that'll get me 4 regulars in Naples. I think that's actually not a bad idea. And that'll put me in a position in conjunction with the galleys that I have here to launch something directly against the Ottomans. And given that they moved their force up to Budapest, this may be my best move. We shall see. I was looking at the building armies and navies and such not, but it's kind of weird. Okay, that's going to get us to the end of the spring deployment. And now we find our sequence of play again. And we will be in the action phase. No headlines. So, again, though, you know, I'm fighting enough. I read through the rules. They're not sticking very well. I remember the basic rules, obviously, because I played Tantomonta not long ago. But in terms of grasping, you know, the specifics of this game, yeah, it's hard. Those just did not stick as well as they should have. That's what comes from not going through them with a fine-tooth comb. It's going to be pretty today. It's supposed to hit 60, so the walk yesterday, you know, I think about it and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind a little walk, but I don't want to go on something that's like an hour and a half that I did yesterday. Probably end up cutting wood instead. We'll see. Anyway, back to the game. It's on to the action phase. Always the Ottomans go first. I'll start reporting as reporting feels like it needs to be done. I don't know. You know, again, I don't feel like I have to demonstrate the mechanisms or whatever. If I didn't do that the first time, and there's tons of videos on this from me on that first time, somebody else has. Point to something that is going to be painful. And I'm going to fuck up. And I don't care because, again, I'm not playing this as competitively as I think I probably tried originally. But this card, first of all, 3 actions on it. I thought there were one. I thought they didn't do that in this one, but I'm wrong. But the third one, Ottomans may play this card as a response to cancel the play of any one event card as an event. That's a powerful card, no question. And I want to hold it for that, but here's the problem. If I hold it for that, I'm probably going to forget that I have a response card in my hand. And it's already hard enough to remember, you know, to check my cards for the quantity of response cards that there are in the game. But when they're not labeled as such clearly on the top, it's going to be particularly hard. Now, in an opposed game, well, if I'm in the same new to the game type experience, it probably won't be any worse than any other response card, especially since I'll get used to having that in my hand every turn. So it may actually be easier than the others, even though it's unlabeled. But the first time or second time playing, you know, maybe not if I'm the Ottomans both times, but you know, it's going to be harder to remember those kind of things. I'll just scan my hand. Do I have a response card? Which is something I don't. I think Time of Wars had this issue as well. Either that or Clash of Sovereigns. One of those where they had response cards that don't look like response cards, and it's because they have multiple uses. But nice thing, I'm still familiar enough in the system that there are core things that I can remember and look up. So like Siege, I immediately thought to myself, okay, I know how the Here I Stand system works for Siege. You have to move in and siege on another impulse because the points, you know, are kind of fluid in the game. You can use them for what you like, which means if I'm going to take either of these, I probably will go for this one, I guess. I need to spend. So for my first card, I'll need to spend 1 point to go in here. And then I think about other things I want to do, you know, and then I look for the card that gets me the points that I want, and maybe I fiddle around with points on other things like, you know, this patronage or whatever. I play the John Hawkins. This is my lowest valued card. That's not a response or battle card, which I may decide I need. Cost me 1 to move into here from Budapest. I leave a garrison behind. Yeah, I'm going into a lot of detail, but I feel like it's necessary. I spend 1 for a naval move to shift my fleets out. This gets my fleet into position to deal with at least some of what these might do. These guys are not in a great position for piracy with all these fortresses. Well, with a couple of fortresses sitting on them. So I don't want to do piracy there. I might want to do it up here. Well, there's a couple there as well. So I spend the extra couple points on a patronage for my very good artist there. And that throws this card away, which now the Hawkins card is available for the English if they want to scoop it up. And it hasn't been played as an event. Which, of course, is important because somewhere or another it says you can't play a card as an event twice, but I don't remember where I found that. And so, yeah, that's their turn. Most players don't have treasures. In fact, the only one at the beginning of the game who does is the Spaniards here who have 1. So I've got a lot less complexity in terms of trying to balance out the stupid card play plus treasures arrangement that Tanto Monta had. I found that really, really annoying. I think I'm going to find that annoying here once I start getting, you know, a flow of treasures of any quantity. Like, it's one thing to have one or two, but you really have to like plan your turnout base. Like, it's bad enough planning your turnout on the cards or whatever, which I didn't do here, right? I looked for the card that would work. But cards, you have an easy capability to hold cards that's usually in play. And you've got these cards, you pick them up, you look at them, you say, okay, I got to do that. But then you have this added complexity of the command points that are floating around to extend your turn. And I think, again, I don't remember, because although I read it, things might be a little different from Tanto Monte, and I played that recently enough that the two might collide and give me wrong things. But that in that game, you can't do the same action. Well, I think in this one you cannot do the same action. In that game, you don't want to do the same action because you pay an increased cost each time you do an action you did with your card. In this one, though, it doesn't have singular actions. It has action classes. And I think that's the limiting factor. That you can't. So, for example, if I did a move, that's an orange class. That would prevent me from doing everything in that entire class, as opposed to just that particular action choice being more expensive. So there's a lot more flexibility in Tanto Monte. I'm not sure which I prefer. Limitations, like, obviously it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me why this differentiation is there or not, but in a gameplay point of view, actual limitations might make your job easier and harder. Also had to play a big card, shifting some forces down. They were not intercepted here. And they make a movement into there, threatening important areas on the Muslim side. I will have to, I have an issue with line of communication if this fleet gets knocked out of there. That's a danger, and I'm outgunned, so it might not be the wisest move, but it's the only way I can justify being at war with the Turks still. Although the Turks probably wouldn't have let me out of the war because they want to be at war with me. On to the English, I guess. First thing with England I wanted to look at is, hey, what about that Hawkins event? Because that's appealing to me. Well, he has three options, one of which, removing enemy informant, doesn't apply yet. Another is to flip all English galleons and home ports to their race belt side. I don't have a lot. I only have two. I'm not sitting in a war situation now. It might be worth taking the card and making it a held card. For that, it would get rid of my home card, so that wouldn't be too bad. But I'd be giving up a 5-point card for a 4. This one's a little bit maybe more exciting. England spends 5 CP on building naval units, including expeditions, naval moves, and/or piracy. During these actions, John Hawkins' piracy rating is increased by 2 in the Guinea coast and the Spanish Main. Here and here. However, if England fails to roll a single 4, 5, or 6 when resolving piracy by Hawkins, England is penalized with a slave trade marker. Yeah, there's a problem. Isn't there? Oh no, I do have Hawkins here. So that might be the most appealing thing for me to do, is because piracy gives you the bonus, and where is the Spanish? So I don't know what's up with this. I don't think that's going to impact me. Piracy gives you the Spanish, gives you an opportunity to generate more cards. as well as victory points and whatnot. So playing for that might make sense. If I do that, I'm going to hold my card that I grab. I may want to do other things first, but everybody knows I can do that. Of course, delaying gives me an opportunity to see if there's a better card that gets played out there, not for an event. Weird. I'm going to play this response card that doesn't really apply much to me. I have one other card that I want to play, the Belgic Confession. Again, I probably kind of want to hold that till the end. This card I've already discussed, probably not worth much. I mean, if I didn't use it now with the worst cards in my hand possible, why? Okay, give a card in my hand to another player, then draw a new card. I just don't see too much reason for that, unless there's a card I want another player to have, and I don't want to pay too big a price for it. But I'm still paying two crappy cards, right? So yeah, I don't particularly want to hold that. The Dragoid Falls, you know, it's early in the game. I'm probably not hunting the Ottomans particularly to knock them out. Hey, I forgot to look up victory conditions. I may well be holding two cards this turn, though. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, because I don't have a lot to spend cards on, I spent the 2-point card and I put it on D, which I'm a little iffy about, because what else am I going to spend my points on other? Like, if I get good cards, what am I going to do? I just don't have many actions to take here. I guess Suppress Heresy is a Catholic space that I could fuck with. A couple of them. In Ireland, too. Oh, no, Ireland's not part of the religious conversion zone. Kind of makes sense. You wouldn't expect, or at least I don't think it is. I think it's the areas where there are Protestants already. But yeah. Now, there was something I wanted to look up, but I've lost my brain on it. Like, it floated away from my thinking. And that's the thing. There's so much in this game to hold in your head at once that it's very, very hard. At least one thing. Yeah. So, in Here I Stand, you definitely find yourself in places where, you know, you're maybe like, I don't know, I wish I was at war. I screwed up by not being at war. I don't really feel like England screwed up by not being at war. They really don't need to be at war at all. But you find yourself in positions where there's just not much for you to do. And I'm trying to think of one in particular. But in general, I know that, so the papacy and the Protestants in Here I Stand always have something to play around with, because they're just constantly picking off each other's spaces. Spain probably has itself in some kind of war type situation. Well, Spain and the HRE. They probably are in some kind of war or want to influence other factors. There's always places you can ditch points into the diplomatic side of things or whatever, if you don't have a place to put your points. And you can hold cards for a later turn when things will be more exciting, when you really want to do stuff. So it's just there's certain turns in Here I Stand where it feels like you don't have much you're doing. But I guess it feels the same here. It's just, yeah, I have this extra, you know, these extra point drains over here. I can't do the Italians. I don't have any cards for that. I'm already kind of exhausted. So I'm going to put my dice on top of, let's use white ones. The red blends into the red too well. On top of the French, and take a pause here. Just processing the choices is hard, you know, in part because I have to look so much shit up to figure out, you know, because the rules just aren't internalized for me. And, you know, I assume Here I Stand was the same way the first time I played it. I remember kind of stumbling away, feeling numb after it. But being very excited and wanting to play it again. The thing with these others is they're more complex. They've got more chromey type stuff going on in them. And on top of that, it's that same core system. And I like the core system. I generally like a fair amount of chrome in my games. But it just kind of hurts to have to keep looking things up and trying to figure out how everything correlates and everything. Especially that it's showing up in a more bloated form each time. Each one gets worse and worse in that way. The French played a 2-point card to put Leclerc. That allows me to keep Latetsu here alive if I want to use, available if I want to use a scientist. Although there's more points for me going for an artist probably. On the other hand, the scientists can give me scientific benefits. And I put Leclerc with a colony out here for just those 2 points. That feels like quite a good deal. I can do a naval move, shift to the Atlantic coast, and gather something here. Could have put him on the Guinea coast to begin with instead, in which case he could have sailed either into the South Atlantic or up to go for Florida. But I feel like I'm doing this early enough in the turn. I might as well grab myself something that is, you know, traditionally Canadian. I don't feel any particular reason. And I think there are advantages to it, but I'm not absolutely certain, in the sense that, like, somebody would have to be targeting me at this point to go here. If I'm here or here, they could be targeting Portuguese or Spanish along with me, and I wouldn't have as much warning, etc. This guy has less of a navigation rating than Latetsu. I don't think it matters if I had to look up the rules, etc. But if I don't cross a hazardous pathway, or, well, here are the hazardous, or go against an arrow. So there's that. Interesting stuff in life. First of all, I went out and I cut me some wood. And I'm just having nightmares about, you know, security issues. As I should at this point. So I have ordered a key, actually a couple of them, which turns out is a hell of a lot cheaper than a phone. Like, I knew it would be cheaper than a phone, but it appears to be just, you know, a one-time cost, which leads me to some questions as to whether it's simply an electronic code or if it's something that gets sent a code and sends a check back. I can't imagine it's the first. If it was, it wouldn't be secure at all. If it was like a fixed code, because then that could be intercepted and it just becomes a fixed piece of information like a password or whatever. But either way, even if it isn't particularly secure, it's still more secure than what I'm doing. And I can hook it up to a couple of accounts that are absolutely vital to my continued existence, which, yeah, because somebody managed to get my LinkedIn password or whatever, and like I said with Facebook, that got hit. But again, I don't know if Like, I don't know what happens when you get hacked on Facebook, right? Like, do they just disappear those suspicious activities from you? Or, because if that's the case, then yeah, maybe I have been multiple times. I know those passwords weren't secure for me as opposed to, some of these more important ones, but I'm like, if they're getting them off my browser, then I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble no matter what. And this will be a step forward in my process and whatever. Anyway, for those of you seeking to hack me, the other answer is that, like, Facebook has automated procedures or people flag things. And if it's that last one, I'm really pissed off. But yeah, I contacted them and, they sent me something, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to unlock the account. But I feel like I should be able to use the key for them. If not, fuck it. I'm done with Facebook, right? It's not like it's of any value to me or has anything except for personal stuff. And with the LinkedIn, it was weird. I don't even understand why somebody did, what the advantage is. They took my account, changed the name, changed everything on it, just inserted a new person into there, a new resume, everything. And they kept my contacts, but those wouldn't be interesting. Like the only reason, the only reason I'd be on there is to try to get a job. And if you're going to just put a resume and all this other shit up there, it had nothing to do with the kind of work I was doing. So, and those connections would just seem random. So I don't know. I don't see the value of it at all. Like, I could see the value of keeping my resume, etc., and keeping access and trying to get a job that way. I can't see the value of making up another resume. But yeah, and LinkedIn is something I really don't use. There are a couple of people I had contact on with that, but I also contacted them and was like, somebody basically disappeared all the information on my profile to replace it. I have no idea why they would fucking do this, but if you can back it up, that'd be cool. If not, I don't really care because I'm not looking for work ever again. Empire is not so defenseless as they may have seen, but it's not that great. I play this army mutiny. It would get rid of all mercenaries, great. There are none. The Turks can't have any mercenaries, but the target also loses all regulars unless they discard a card or treasure immediately. And in order to keep everything, they have to throw a 4-point card. Now, I know they have a 4-point card, but they're going to have to discard something. And this is a powerful card, but only if you're facing a thick fortress. So Turkey has 3 cards they could choose. I'll select among them. They obviously do not want to lose their entire field army. Discard, I don't remember what it is, tribute or something like that. The Grand Vizier card could have canceled that event in and of itself, but I can essentially cancel it with a card that has less flexible capabilities in my current situation. So I got rid of that. I like that treachery card potentially, so I don't want to get rid of that at this point, but it's going to severely limit the amount that the Ottomans can do in their war by taking that 5-point card away. Now, I know they have 2 5-point home cards. On to the Protestants, then I'll take a break. Like I said, I cut some wood. Again, my energy was running down, and then the battery on my chainsaw or something set it beeping. I again had trouble pulling the battery. I managed to do it this time, But it's like, after playing with the saw for whatever length of time I do, you know, it's like not very long. I'm guessing about a half hour is what I can manage. It may be longer than that, but it doesn't seem like it. You know, I'm so fatigued after that like, yeah, I don't really want to, you know, physically, I actually have difficulty with doing the things I know to get the battery out. All right, onward. Protestants want more options, so they're going to play the Puritans card. The English player must choose to allow you to either draw a random card from their hand or add on rest to 3 unoccupied spaces. If a card draw is selected, draw the card and reveal it to everyone, then choose to either discard it or give it to the Protestants. But I'm the Protestant, so I get it. It seems positive to me. Quelling unrest isn't that hard, but I believe you have to have a unit next to the space that the unrest is in, which would mean there's a space here that would require the English to spend 2 points to quell unrest in. So basically I'm saying I'm going to take away a 4-point card of yours or a random card. We'll look at our hand, and we do not want to lose the 4-point card, particularly, so we are going to give a card. This is a randomly drawn card. It can't be the home card. And I'll count them 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. We get the taxis. That weakens the English considerably. They do not have a lot of cards left. That's going to put us to the Ottomans. Since I've worked around and completed the first round of the game, or the first round of the first turn, I'm going to pause here. Probably eat something. I don't know. I have to say, even with the rules lookups and everything, I am enjoying this a little bit by getting rid of the expectations, or more than I thought I would, by getting rid of the expectations of playing out, you know, a competitive play of the game. And this game, like Here I Stand, and I know I've been ragging on this in a lot of ways, I honestly think that I could reasonably you know, if I played it a few times in a year, I think I could reasonably grasp what core strategies are, etc. It's just that a first approach is really, really tough. And I gotta say, Here I Stand, I kind of think I didn't know what I was doing the first time. That's why I did another video on it almost immediately after. But this does push it further than I want it to be, at least initially. But, you know, once you kind of get into the flow of, I'm deciding a card, I play it, whatever, and not really worry too much about the strategy, well, maybe it's not so terrible. Which is kind of the feeling I got with Tanto Monta. But I do actually think that you could, like, I could visualize myself maybe playing this after, you know, immediately after playing it once or twice. I could imagine myself playing it competently, which is more than I can say about either Tanto Monta or Time of Wars. Both of those I feel push the complexity of all the special cases too far. This one, yeah, it's got a lot of complexity with the marriages, with the patronage chart and everything, a little bit with the exploration stuff and the piracy. But as you get used to the core mechanisms there, they are repeated. It's not like each country has a whole big set of special abilities. And honestly, even in Tanto Monta, the special abilities aren't that bad per power. Maybe a little bit more complicated than here. But you got 2 powers per player. And the only person with 2 powers in this sort of kind of is the Protestants, who have the Huguenots and the Dutch Revolt. But yeah, playing and letting myself blunder through it, I honestly think that's the way to learn the game, is to get together and play a game knowing that it's not going to be that tight competitive thing. And, you know, maybe those others, although Time of Wars, I have to say the rules have a lot of issues that really kind of preclude it from being the kind of competitive game. You're going to have to come to some decisions on those. Turk said something of a hard call. They ended up playing a 1-point card. One they kind of liked. They could have used this for their interception attempt, but they didn't, because, of course, it's a response card, and I don't remember those. I didn't even remember to think to look, even though I know that there are a lot out there. And conducted their siege, which was successful. A large force against a small force can do a good job on sieges. It's hard when there's any quantity of troops. There was one, but it was basically a choice between a low point card, their treachery card, which seems a real waste in this case. Might be useful if I end up sieging Vienna. They could have spent their big Grand Vizier card, which is very useful as well. The points they could have used with either of those at 5 would have allowed 1, 2, convert 3, 4, and then I'd have an extra point to play around with, which would be appealing. But instead, and you know, I could build a cav here in Istanbul or something to help protect it, although I don't think the Spaniards are going to make it that far. However, I felt it was more valuable, what happens if I play that 5-point card and I don't succeed in the siege? And it was a close run thing. I won, you know, I got 1 hit and they got 1 hit on me. And that'll shift us over to the Spaniards. There's a couple of interesting choices. They have a decent hand of cards compared to, I don't know, the Muslims are a little low. I'm looking at their main enemy here. And, wow, they just played a 1. See, the problem is I know what the Muslims have in their hand and how valuable the cards are. They have 2 things they could choose, basically. They could play a cheap card, capture this, lay siege to this. Or they've got this Ruler Falls Ill card, which would be incredibly valuable in this current situation. It's basically a 50-50 chance of hitting a 5-point card. It can't hit the home card, but I don't know what the Muslims have. The fact that I do know, my gut is telling me that the Spanish would go ahead with this anyhow, because right now the Muslims are up there with their force facing the HRE. There's one slight issue, though. The Muslims could reinforce some of these keys that they've taken. And that is appealing. The 2-point card is perfect. I spend 1 to convert this space, and then I siege. That is just about, you know, exactly what I want. Unfortunately, there's no line connecting Salonika and Athens. There shouldn't be, but it means that I have to spend a bigger card, like a 3-point card, and to set up my next siege. Well, actually, it's a siege here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this, which is not a terribly useful card, would be available next time. I think I'm just going to go with the Selim card. Now, I could have played the other 2-point card, El Dorado, but that might actually come in useful. I see somebody sailing around. They could end up in a position where they're threatening my goodies. So I'll play the Selim card. Suleiman dies. Selim II replaces him, and this goes here. And in addition, and essentially, we no longer have the card bonus here. We have a 1 card bonus, but we don't get to use both of our Ottoman home cards on the next turn. But there's a Cyprus chit for events, and that gets placed on in the list of places, but it gets placed on Cyprus. The Turks now want to take that, and they get a victory point for it. This, at the start of turn 2, gives Selim II to the Ottoman as a bonus card if still in the deck. So it kind of sucks for them that it got dealt out. This game has a smaller deck, I think. We'll see as we get later in the game, but the starting deck feels a little smaller than Tantomontes. Of course, less cards are dealt out. But what that means is it's more likely that one of these things shows up. And I'll keep the other options and just do what I do. And I know I'm showing you a lot of the play here for no real great reason, except, I don't know, except it's what I feel like doing. It honestly, it feels like if I try to summarize what's going on in these games, it's really hard to remember sort of the salient points. On the other hand, of course, if I don't try to summarize and give you a blow-by-blow of what's happening, yeah, you're going to catch all the salient points, but you get some dross as well. I play the Virgin Queen card to grab John Hawkins. I could play it immediately, but in general, unless there's some immediate need to act, it's kind of good to delay your actions in this game. EU Pop had the same thing, where you want to play it out and make sure that you get unanswered plays. Especially if you're a piece, there's almost no reason, there's very little that you can do that is time sensitive, you know? I think this is the best option for me with the Virgin Queen. It's hard to tell. I could have delayed a little bit by playing the Belgic Confession, which I want to play, but maybe I would rather keep it as a saved card, right? That helps the Protestants more than it helps me, but it does help me. I need to get the Protestant points up to get some additional victory points from that. Now, trying to figure out, I don't think there's any kind of counter that takes into account the victory points on the religious chart. There's one that has base victory points, baseline victory points, and actual victory points. I think what that's for is for the less than 6-player games. If you're playing in 4 or 5 players, these NPC, these non-player controlled countries end up, you get points equal to how well you do with them over the course of you running them. That's what I'm guessing. I don't remember. I haven't seen any rules on it. And I did not read the rules for the 4 and 5 player game. I was hoping, and maybe I should still wait for the Grand Tour to come out, because I only have a 1-card hold. I have this index of prohibited books, which maybe I want to play. This would allow me to convert some areas to Catholic. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that instead. I don't want to play my home card because it allows me, I'm going to play it for the wedding festivities, which gives a +2 to the chance of the wedding, probably giving both of us more points. But I get a free card draw. But if the Grand Tour is in the discard pile, and it won't be, nobody has it, but if it is, I get to pull that instead, and I'm assuming that's a good card. Dunno, but why would you call it out otherwise? I'm gonna keep the wedding festivities up here because I know it's available all the time, and I really had to hunt through this because of the Paris holding victory points. So we're gonna do our first conversion, which are different rules in this game. I'm going to have to reread them. You know, I've not only did I read them when I was down there, but I think I've kind of peeked at them since then. But any of these mechanisms, until you play them, you really kind of have to follow the procedure. Once you do, some of these there's a nice combat table that gives me all the combat information once you get kind of used to doing them. But some of these charts and whatnot are in there, and they're useful, but I feel like that's only useful as a reminder. Until I've done it once, the reminder's probably going to screw me up a little bit. So yeah, it's one of the things though that you get in the habit of just looking in the rule book all the time instead of bothering with the player aids. The nice thing in this one, sure, there's all of these, and this has some charts on it that affect things. But for the most part, it's all contained on one double-sided sheet. As opposed to Tanto Monta that has, I don't fucking remember how many sheets it has. It wasn't as bad as whatever the hell I was playing last. What the hell was I playing last? Gosh. I had a whole fucking pile of cards I had to deal with. Oh, yeah. I don't remember what it's called. It's the All Is Lost Save Honor sequel, and I've already forgotten its name. Damn. There it is. El Gran Capitan. Yeah, that had a ridiculous amount of player aids. Like 6 of them. And they're all, it's not like 3 for each player. It's 6 different player aids. Yeah. As well as like a chart that had other stuff. But one of them was like the setup stuff and things like that. But still, it was a hell of a lot of stuff. But I think Tanto Monta had a couple of them. I know it came with a big stack, so it may have just been 1 per player. But I felt like I was constantly having to look stuff up because there just wasn't enough information on the player aid. So I'm kind of used to that. Boy, I like to babble instead of do. Now, I don't know how valuable this is because I have the suppress heresy capability up here under 2 that costs 2 points that I could do instead. Where I can hit, I guess, French Catholic spaces. I would get 5 Catholic conversion attempts. What's this going to do? This is going to give me 6. The bonus is probably worth it. Now I look, the first die roll is a 6, which is cool. And then I get 5 more dice. And I roll them. All right, that is of interest. If the conversion attempts are by these, I get bonuses. They're not. Drop misses. 2s and 3s are misses. That's all of this. And yeah, this is different from how, like, here I stand, it's like you roll and 5s and 6s hit, and I think that's it. But here there's more going on. Take on rest markers. If a 1 was rolled on any of the dice, it was not. Any die currently showing a 6 is a major conversion. For major conversions, you can either save the die to convert a space under a Catholic or... Oh, I'm on the wrong side. It's the same stuff. Right? Yeah. Save a die for step 6 to convert under a Protestant unit. There aren't any. Or flip a space to Catholic religious influence to enlarge your base area before you use your extra dice. Okay. Now, to convert, space has to be adjacent to a space under Catholic religious influence, or as a port connected by a C-zone that contains ports in the Catholic religious influence. Now, I could do this in the Netherlands or up in Scotland. The space must be adjacent to a space under Catholic that contains other ports, and it cannot contain a Protestant unit. Okay. I think the most important thing, I look at these, and I think Scotland, yeah, it would suck. But I'm going to flip the two keys, which are both adjacent to this. So the 6 didn't really do me anything. I could have injected myself further south. With one of these die rolls. I feel like we're intermingled enough that I don't really care about that. So I got something, I guess. And that means 2 Protestant spaces change to Catholic, so this slides down. Got to keep track of that, because it'll be a pain in the ass to count them if they're changing. And that will get me over to the Empire, who does not feel very good. They're feeling kind of queasy about all those Turks. The HRE's turn, but this guy was captured. This is how you mark it here. There's no special jail space on these cards. The cards are smaller, though. That means it has a little bit less footprint. It's still taking up a lot of space, though. Maybe more than Tanto Monta did. The reason... So there's no jail space. There's also no flipped over side that shows jailed. The reason is there's these default leaders, where if you lose a leader completely, he gets replaced with a default, who... honestly isn't very good, but he allows you to move a few more pieces. So the conundrum that the HRE is facing, other than having declared a war that they shouldn't have, I got this Patron of the Arts. I would love to play this. It gives, it allows me to pull an Italian. Ooh, or random. Fuck. Maybe I screwed up. This was the only choice here. This was the only choice here. Okay. I'm going to have to look that up. I thought you could just select, but if it's randomized, that obviously changes the calculus as to whether or not you want to do that action. But if you can, if there's only one of that type, you'd be able to select anyway. That's what I get for not knowing the rules. I'd get a 3 CP patronize. There's an additional bonus. If Rudolph is the Emperor. And I get an extra card from the deck. That's very powerful. I may want to do that. See, first of all, that gets it out of my hand and I can pass them. Here's the thing, though. The Turks are getting close. They could move 1, 2, 3 and lay me under siege and take out the remainder of my forces, basically, which is not appealing. I could make it a little harder, play something like this, and I could build myself 4 militia, or 2 regulars. So they have 3, 4, 5, 11 points of stuff. I could get up to like 8. I would still probably lose the battle, but might win and might inflict some casualties. Militia are dangerous. I think they disappear during the winter phase. I'm not sure of that. Look. I know their equivalent does in Tanto Monta, which is basically noble levies. I don't see it here. Interesting. Winter phase, looks like it's in the 20s. Like, can't think of when else they would go. I'm sure there are cards that fuck with the militia. But yeah, it looks to me like I just want to buy, not militia, mercenaries. I just want to buy some mercenaries. Let's do that. Let's get our numbers higher. I don't know if they're going to be as good in combat either. Like, again, in Tanto Monta, they are not. But they're close. The equivalent there, though, is basically feudal levies. Again, I don't want to look up every rule ahead of time and make my plans that way. I'm going to do best guesses on these things and then follow the procedures of the rules as they go and curse my stupidity, you know, of not knowing the rules essentially when it happens. But yeah, I just don't feel like I can hold everything in head, you know. And that puts me back to the Protestants. Protestants are able to hold 2 cards, and I look through my cards. These 2 don't do much except give points, so I think they're the ones I'm likely to hold. The question really comes down to, I have a bunch of Protestant conversion attempts here and here. This could create a whole shitload of Protestant conversion attempts too. But more than that, I could start a rebellion with these suckers. Now this creates 14, which would give me a big jump up here. And I'm tempted to do that. I don't know if there's some big advantage. If I start the rebellion, that's how I'm going to get my troops and everything on the board. If I do that when the French are out of cards, I might be able to drive them into a really bad position and maybe seize Paris, you know. So I look on the board and there just isn't a hell of a lot there. No matter what, though, I want to hold this to the last card I play unless I'm going to use other cards to manipulate and fight with. And so the weakest of all of these is the John Knox card, which is what I'm going to play. Now I can do 2 things. Flip all but 1 space in Scotland to Protestant. Or I can add influence to Scotland. I'm not terribly interested in having Scotland as an ally. It's really something, like I could take it away from the French. But that's really just helping the Brits, and they're not even at war, and yeah, so all but 1 space in Scotland. What'll I leave? I'll leave Glasgow, because that is close to England and they can play with that. And that adds 2 more Protestant spaces here, changing the dynamics again. We've gone all the way around. So I'm going to move the dice over here to the Turks, take another break. Taking it easy, you know. It's not yet raid time. It's pretty out. But yeah, I'm probably just going to lay down, read. I've got a nice book to read. Got Stellar Horizons 2 to read too. I may not be able to get to that before I finish this, you know, and in that case, I don't know. You know, I've always got lighter things I can read. I also have really massive games that I feel like I know well enough. I don't know if I have lighter things. Like, I've got stuff that should be light because I've played a lot. Like, I've got some CWB games I haven't played yet. I've the Civil War Brigade series. I've got things like the GB ACW that I haven't played yet, that I want to get to. I feel like I'm going to have to skim those rules just like I did with this to have any kind of feel towards that. And the same may be true with some magazine games that are older that I have. It's really funny how something like, honestly, something like Empires in Arms, that's the one that's on my mind. But you could kind of say the same, although I would definitely have to skim it a little bit. The Sword and the Stars, which I don't think I've covered yet. Not sure. Which would be appealing to people. But it's very funny how it's like these longer games, and I don't know that I've played all that many times, you know. I don't think I've played Empires in Arms more times than I've played a lot of other games, but it feels like I know enough of the rules that just reading them. Oh, I had a bird hit me, I think, or come close. It didn't get, well, it didn't die immediately. Like, probably one of those little guys there. Got to clean my porch. I had another windstorm. All right. Anyway, I just don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, it's like I've probably played CWB games, you know, 2 or 3 times as much, if you count them all together, as I've played Empires in Arms. But somehow that just sticks in my head better. Now, I can't say the same about, you know, the Third Reich stuff, although, you know, that's gone through so many different editions. Too many that I have here, or with. But I don't know that I've played them all that much. I don't know. It'll be more and more the case these days. That's the addictions. I'm finding it harder to come up here and play. You know, I force myself. I see. Now, I haven't been up all night. I had several hours of sleep. But then I tied myself up into things that, like, you know, raid and just watching videos and shit that, like, throw away the time. I start on the Ottoman turn. I play their home card for points. And I use 3 of them to move up to here. I'm going to launch an attack there. I've got enough cards that I might be able to, well, I have the treachery card, which almost certainly will give me that key if I want it. But I have this Tilbury speech, which is going to give me a bonus in dice in a battle. The HRE doesn't know about that. They have close enough odds they'll fight a field battle there, because they have a big enough army that they can't fit in the location. Despite the couple of dice I got for the Tilbury speech, I was still beaten back by the Habsburgs up here. That means I can't do anything else with those units. That left me a couple of points. I spent 1 to do a naval move, shifting all my fleets in here to try to cut his line of communication. Once again, I came up short, even though I highly outnumbered my opponent. The red dice are just not rolling very well for me here, and got driven. Now, the rules for retreat at sea seem more flexible than those in a land move. First of all, you're allowed to coordinate your fleet. You can gather units from both sides and bring the fleet together. But because you're able to move more than 1 stack in any given naval move. But then the retreat, actually, I had the option to retreat into an adjacent port or an adjacent sea zone. And it doesn't have to be where I came from, which kind of surprised me. Anyway, line of communication is kept open, and looks like bad stuff is happening for the Ottomans. Very bad stuff. Getting driven back here was horrible. I'm down to 1 card. Nobody knows quite how powerful a card it is, but whatever. The problem is, and this has to do with sleeping in lots of little periods, but anyway, I'm either very hungry or very tired. And, you know, I feel like if I lay down and read or something, I would fall asleep. If I eat something, that would be cool too, but I've already eaten like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I don't know, 4 hours ago or so. So I guess it makes some sense that I'd be hungry. But I'm kind of trying to avoid eating as much as I have been. And, you know, my mind is like concentrating on, oh, I'm tired, oh, I want to eat. I'll try to do the Spaniards, but whatever. I spent an event that I kind of wouldn't like to do, but yeah, the Spanish Fury. Hey, I just did an assault. I can play this as a response. I get to, it was a successful one. And that's the thing. I wanted to spend 4 points because siege, 1, 2, 3, adds up to 4. Well, I had 2 4-point cards in my hand. Sure, I have a 5-point, but, you know, trying to spend 1 point on something is kind of a pain in the ass. It's not really that pleasant. I know that the Turks only have 1 card. So, what happens? Winning player draws and keeps a card from the loser's hand, if any, and another card from the deck, extending my turn significantly. Now, the Council of Troubles is a great card because it allows me to do Catholic conversions in the Netherlands. Right now, though, I don't want to play that. There is like 1 Protestant space in the Netherlands, but I'm expecting the Dutch to cause issues. I was lucky to have this card, but I kind of don't want to play it because I'm tied into this war with the Turks. So I also generate a +1 card for 1 turn for the Turks out of that. But, you know, I got a lot this turn. I might be able to put them really heavily on the ropes and maybe able to negotiate some sort of peace, or, I don't know, get real close to winning. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the victory conditions. Here. Paris goes to anyone. It's not just the French who can get those Paris points. Well, not anyone. France, Spain, or the Protestants. But what I'm looking at here, okay, the domination victory can't happen until turn 4 or later, which is a big deal because we're well on the way towards that. I mean, we have that right now if we get to the end of the turn. But if we can get to the 25, we win. And if we can get the military victory, we win. And that is actually immediate. I don't see either of those actually happening, but there are 2 keys, 1, 2, here, and I have a big handful of cards. This game could be over right away. That'd be kind of neat. And kind of disappointing in terms of not really answering my question. But I do feel like by approaching it in the I'm not trying to play this competitively aspect at all, it takes away a burden. It takes away a burden that, you know, otherwise I kind of don't enjoy being there. Kind of a pity here. I played the John Hawkins card, started in the Guinea Coast, bought a colony, which I believe I can do even though, so I can build naval units including expeditions, naval moves, and or piracy with the 5 points I have. But where build expedition happens, the second point is under that command. That's what gives you the colony. So I sailed here, established a colony here, and then fired off a piracy check. So 2 to build, 3 to move, 4, 5 for the piracy. The Spanish, I succeeded in the piracy, and the Spanish gave me a victory point. I could have used more dice if I had done it in, the Guinea Coast or the Spanish Main. So if I'd done the piracy here first, that would have actually been wiser, because I would have gotten an extra die. But I kind of didn't want to do it while I had the colony on board. Felt like that was dangerous. I don't know if you're allowed to even. But now Hawkins no longer has this bonus. The card goes back in the deck. It's not one that gets knocked out. And then I have to look at the winter turn and see if I want to try to intercept the treasure fleet. I'll put it over to France. Something, colonies aren't automatically established. I don't know if it told me that. I mean, I assume it does somewhere. Like I ran into it in something, but where did I find that it's like at movement or something. If arriving in the ocean, the expedition survived carrying the colony. The active player may place the colony. Yeah, it just indicates that, like, it's just placed. Jesus. I don't know where it's going to tell me that I need to roll on this colony table. Maybe that's something else. Why did I see that? Why did I see it? I saw it because I was looking at the science bonuses here. Free colony each expedition, +1 to colony rolls. I think the colony shows up for free. This is probably a later thing to see what I get out of it. Let me check the winter turn and make sure that's the case, because I don't see anything here that says I have to roll. This is, I was trying to figure out the French action. I just bypassed it. This is getting really annoying. I looked in the winter phase, didn't see anything. Looked in the card draw phase where, or not, is it card draw? Refresh treasures, maybe it tells me here. I looked under the card draw where it talked about treasures over here, and it says receiving treasures. Where is it? Treasures enter the hands of other 5 players by successful colony rolls and when an expedition returns home with captured loot. Well, thanks. So then I look here and I don't see anywhere where colony rolls happen. But maybe it's here in the card draw phase. Refresh treasures. Yeah. So that's there. Check for New World riches is, I guess, what it is. I don't know. I think they would say colony rolls in there somewhere. Whatever. All right. So I don't have to make a roll for that yet. And what I was doing with the French was trying to figure out, is there a scientific bonus that I want? Because I would be better off. So I don't have great cards here. This Iconoclastic Fury is a Protestant roll. I don't really want to do that. I'm not in a war or anything. I could do naval moves though. Kind of want to establish that colony. Whew, I got this stupid home card. I got to play that at some point. What's that going to do for me? That I was going to play for the +2 wedding festivities, I think. So this would be my 1 card. And I was going to pay 3 to put Tetsu up there. I don't know if that's such a bright idea. Instead, I'll pay 1 for a naval move. And we'll set ourselves up in Montreal. Why not? And it doesn't allow me to, like, I could move and do piracy and shit. But instead, I'm going to put, I think I pick at random for artists. Something had said random. Again, I wouldn't have thought that, except that I saw it somewhere else. After choosing the number of CPs, select an artist at random, even if that includes artists of different types. Okay, so it doesn't really matter, but it's odd even. I could do the scientist. I would love to do the scientist, but the chance of me getting a bonus is not that high with Tetsu. He would be rolling at +1. So I would have to roll at least a 10. I don't know what my chances are here either, but I don't have the points to do a piracy. So even we get him here. And we'll see what we get out of those. That will move this over to the HRE. Might as well finish this cycle around. The Holy Rolling Empire is in a war. I'm not going to do patronage, although there are huge advantages. You know, I have the patronage card. That's one of my bonuses. I spend a 3-point card. Maybe I spend the 5-point card. I spend the 5-point card. Budapest is important to me, but if I build a couple of mercenaries here, then I'm at 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, got an extra point. I can't bring all of that. Okay. I build 2 mercenaries. 2, 3, 4. I have one more point I could spend. I was going to move this unit forward, but now I could just build another regular in Vienna instead. Is there a 1-point action that is appealing to me? I can't send the siege into play. Not much I can do with a naval move. Expeditions for me are more expensive than they are for like most of the other players. Oh, how's the Turks? Yeah, everybody else gets them at 1-2. I have to pay 2 to build an expedition. It makes sense. I got to go further. So why don't I make this a regular? I don't know if regulars are particularly valuable, but and that gets rid of my home card so that I could conceivably pass, but I don't want to because I want to conduct the siege next turn. Last player is the Protestants. They're going to have a complicated turn because they're going to do religious shit. Huguenot Lent. That ended up kind of iffy. Ooh, I got this stupid point that I've got to use. And it's horrible. It's a 1 CP. I mean, I can't do much with it. I can do a naval move. I could build an expedition, but what does a fucking expedition do for me? I don't even have a thing for it. Yeah, remember, I can't do something of the same type. So like if I do a military action, I can't pay a point for that. I've got no cheap builds here. Yeah, I really don't have much that I can do with one. I could use diplomatic influence, you know. That 1 CP is going to be kind of shitty. If I play an event, though, I could like build a mercenary, or I guess that's about it. I guess that's about it. I don't have expeditions, do I? Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I'm even worse than the HRE, but I've got tons of territory. And the one thing that is left for Spain to colonize is the Philippines. And they get that off an event card. So the Lent card was kind of weird. It gives me a free 6. I rolled a 6, but I also rolled a couple of 1s, which means I got an unrest. I chose to take the... I chose to take the 6s in Paris, which is connected, and in Marseille, which is connected. And I had to take the event in one of those two. I figured Marseille is the more effective of those. Although actually, let me see. In winter, I think actually it's a bonus to have unrest all over someone. And it costs the same to quell unrest for 1 unit or not. So I'm going to actually put the unrest up here in Paris. That takes a point away from the French, which I recorded. And we moved up to a new row on there. So the Spanish lost a point and the English and Dutch gained a point. We don't know. It's possible that the Holy Roman Empire could have lost points off of the... no, they could have gained points for a balance thing. But no one knows that until they choose to reveal, well, I don't know, it's kind of forced. like, I think they can keep it hidden and just out of, like, not knowing what they're doing and whatever. But they can use it to block someone from winning the game, or to win the game themselves. Otherwise, it stays hidden, you know, for the rest of the game until the end or whenever it's needed. That brings me all the way around. The Turks would go next. They don't have a turn. I'm going to put this here and hope that I know that the Spaniards go, and try to remember that card, because I'm getting down. Actually, I have a shit ton of cards. But that counter I may want to play. The Protestants wanted to do this one because their big home card gives them lots and lots of conversion attempts. I think I need to do a whole bunch of conversion attempts in the Netherlands itself, so I don't think I can do the Dutch Revolt with that card this turn. Of course, the English are sitting on a card that causes conversions in the Netherlands, so that's of interest too. A little bit of a nap and some food. Very short nap. It's very pretty out. I'm gonna try to play some more, but I also got in my head, I really should go out and cut some more wood. I get so little done each time. King plays their 3-point card. Succeeds in their siege, moves into Istanbul, laying siege to that. I had 1 extra point. I threw that into a diplomacy action. There aren't that many things to do with it. But we are 1 key, Istanbul, away from winning the game. And everybody's got to start panicking now. Okay. I think the English solved the problem with the Belgic Confession. They got conversion attempts. They get 1 free major. I took the free major over here in Ghent. I could have jumped up to Amsterdam or whatever if I wanted to. If for some reason, and I don't think it's the case, that it's illegal to put an unrest on top of troops. I think it's fine to do that. Now, I may not want to do that, actually. See, here's the problem. I think I don't want to do that. I want to do the action that I chose, but I think I'll take this one as my first, and then I'll take this. Okay. That opens up more conversion attempts for the Protestants if they want to do it, but what it does is it creates an unrest on a key. That key is no longer available for points. Now, you only have X number of key spaces in the game, and I don't know if there's any way to take additional keys. Like, this is the problem with the system with the with various things, is that theoretically, like, if it weren't for the unrest marker, you win the game if you have all your keys in place. But the unrest markers change that a little. Getting a weird buzzing off, like, my glasses from my voice. You win the game, except I don't think they count if they're in unrest. Military victory. Enough keys that the auto-win space is open, they win the game. Note these spaces may contain an unrest marker. Okay, so I did not stop it. Yeah. All I'm doing is making it easier for the Dutch to do a revolt. But I still think I won it up in the north there. A couple of points over here. A victory point taken away. Yeah, so what can happen is you can be in a position where you were going to win the game from victory points, and they're canceled out by an unrest marker. But you can't be in the position where you were going to win, like, if you fill all your keys, even if they're in unrest, you still win. I thought that was not the case. And that would be problematic, because it's not like you can pull additional keys or anything like that and conquer something else. Now, you could deal with the unrest, but that's a different matter. Okay, so that does not handle the problem. I thought it did. Go ahead with the wedding festivities. They didn't have a card that can affect the Spanish victory conditions at all, or their position particularly. The real question is, do I want to cancel out that unrest? Well, I've got a saved card that I could use for that. I got to think about it. The real answer is, what happens here? I get the same number of cards. So it's not going to affect my economic situation for the next turn to clean that unrest off. So I might as well hold the card. The Empire captures Budapest there. Or just Budapest is on the other side of them. It's off map. And patronizes a scientist, hoping it's Mercator, so maybe they're hoping to get the map. I don't know. I don't know what that'll be. That brings us to the Protestants, who probably have to try to trigger a revolt now. Choices would have been better. The unrest is not good for the English. The unrest is not particularly good for the Protestants there. I thought it would be. Their card gives them a couple of choices for a rebellion. They can start one rebellion in France or the Netherlands as if 7 CP were spent. Normally you can only spend up to between 2 and 5 for this. Let me see where that is. Rebellion 2 to 5. But I could start 2 rebellions, one in France and one in the Netherlands, splitting them as 4 and 3. If I create a rebellion in either of those, I go to war with the power that's involved there. So if I create a rebellion in the Netherlands, I will be at war with Spain at that point, which means I could start capturing Spanish territory up here. There are no keys in the north other than Amsterdam, and that is the only place that I can convert, to my control. Now, the 7 point is kind of a waste. I'll get 3 regulars for it. I don't have a leader at this point. I get Coligny if I start one in the French territories. So I think I'm actually going to split it, because the way it actually works, the rebellion, if I pick a place with no enemy forces, I roll dice for each CP, +1 if it's a Protestant home space. If there are no forces, I can convert it automatically. I'm looking to see if there's anything Protestant. There's Paris. I'm not going to be able to take Paris. I think I'm better off actually pushing everything into the Netherlands. I'll have this card again next turn. I could start a revolt with the Huguenots. But what's going to happen is, first, I determine whether or not the rebellion happens. That's based on the number of dice against the space. But the space has to be Protestant for me to change it. Now, I could change something like Ghent over and try to capture something, but I don't know how much that really helps me. So I'm going to go for Amsterdamster, and I guess I'll play the full 7 on them. Amsterdam switches sides, which gives me the key in unrest of all things. So that gives me 3 victory points. This is what I got to do here. And that cuts them. They lose the unrest. Actually, I get no victory points. And they don't lose any, because that was a space in unrest that went. If there were any units there after a success, they would run. Now I can switch additional Protestant spaces that are free of enemy units, but they have to be adjacent. There's only one thing that I can switch, which is Haarlem up here. I don't actually need a marker for that. Okay. All right. Conceptually, I don't know if I need markers or not for those guys, because they're like split color. I think the lower is the assumed. Okay. Given that these are all, and these are all French, Receive regulars. I get 1 for every 2 CP spent. That means I'm going to get 3 Dutch regulars there. I don't have a leader, but I can still move such a force, and I can certainly fix the unrest. But it will take an additional card. Now, right now, cards require that I have a key in both, and I'm not going to have that. So again, maybe the unrest isn't that important. Maybe it's worth more for me to save my 2 cards. Update the war state. I don't know. I think this is for those, but I believe this is a war that I don't know if this is a war that can't be resolved. Okay, so now Spain and the Protestants are at war. There's a little marker there. Cost is 0 due to rebellion. They may never ally. Okay, great. And that, I think, is all. Add a Protestant capital. If I don't have a capital for this religious struggle area, I may add one to the map. This gives me some advantages because I can fall back to my capital. So there's the Dutch capital. It's a may, but I think I do want that. Historically, they revolted first in the south, which is why the Protestants are there. Add a military leader. I may add, if there's a Protestant military leader for this struggle available to enter play, I may add it to the space chosen. I can't. I don't have him yet. I think I get him next turn. And that's another time around, which has just prevented the game from being on the verge of an immediate ending. But Spain is still in a powerful position at this point. Fatigue, I feel from having cut wood yesterday, it's still in my body. And I'm kind of worried if I do any significant amount today, whatever I consider significant, I mean, if I do it, okay, because it's just not worth doing if I do less than I did. Then I'm worried I'm going to feel this same kind of like stiffness and tiredness. I think this is why I started skipping dancing for a couple of weeks. The first week that I did it, I think I cut wood the day before, and I felt run down, and I thought I was coming down with a cold, and I kind of feel that way today too. But I don't know. I feel like I need to get some of this done. One of the problems is I've got some pieces that are just too fucking big for me to cope with. Like my little saw is not. I have trouble. I'm having trouble with the logs that I'm doing right now, which, you know. I mean, we're not talking the base of the tree or anything either. It's just these things are thick. Something of a compromise. There was a smaller tree that fell. It's been dead for a while, and I'm cut up some of the logs of that instead. Still a decent amount of work, and hitting muscles and stuff that aren't used to it because I gotta do kind of a horse stance and all kind of stuff like that because of the slope of my ground, and just making sure I don't cut my leg off or something. All right, let's do another round of this. I have a bunch of cards now. Unfortunately, in this particular system, I can't use this one CP to do any of these orange ones, if I recall correctly. I succeeded in the Siege of Istanbul. That transferred some more victory points. One added to Spain. Turkey just cratering, basically. And then moved forward. And that's... Is Siege... Yeah, salt is part of that. Let me just make sure, but I'm pretty sure the color coding is you can't do these things. You you can't use this point for them. So I'm just, delaying. But I've got another key within reach. And the Holy Roman Empire, which could conceivably try to stop me, doesn't have cards left. So, I mean, they could stop me, even though they're allied, they could go grab it, right? Known, the Spanish have 3 cards in their hand. One of them is a home card. Therefore, a lot of points. They're almost there. What I don't know is that they have the treachery card, which pretty much guarantees them the win, actually. The English and French are both passing. That's not a damn thing they can do to help the situation. They could use their cards for something else, but so since the HRE and the Ottomans are out of cards, that leaves it up to the Dutch, who kind of have to take another key. Now they could pass, but for 1 turn, but that would be dangerous, because if the Spanish beat me to taking something, then the game's over and the Spaniards win on the first turn. In fact, because of how far back the Dutch are, they don't have a damn thing they can do. I've got 2 cards. One's a 2-point card. There's not much I can do. First of all, I've got this fortress in my way of Utrecht. Now, if I had started down here, it would have worked out better. But it's hard to grasp everything in the system. It always is difficult to kind of comprehend the ways that you can stop something or whatever. So the 5-point card would have to get me there. Now, I own this, but there's fortress, fortress, no way across outside of this, which means I would have to siege this and then have a bunch of points left to do other things. And I would not have the extra action to fire off the siege. So I think things are basically over. There's not much advantage to me clearing this. If I can't get there, I can't get there. That's all there is to it. So I think I too may have to pass. Give a card from your hand other than a card, and draw a new card from the deck. See, I could play this, give them this nice 5-point card, and then get something weaker. That's not going to help. There's really nothing I can do that's going to solve this situation. The only thing I can do, I think, is hope for the Spanish to fail. And I will hold my 2 cards if they do fail. And I think this game is over already. Spaniards move into position to get their siege. Now, everything's gone right for them in so many ways. They got the HRE to declare war. That moved the Turks forward. They won the naval battle. The Turks are out of cards. Some of that they could have engineered. They had, like, the ruler falls ill. They could have discarded the last card if it wasn't a home card. I don't think it was. And now they're set up to siege. Everybody's still going to pass. And I'll play my big nasty treachery card, which pretty much guarantees me this. This allows me to siege even if I didn't have the line of communications that I have. Which means I don't even have to actually hit. So I have 5 dice to 2. And so long as I have more troops at the end, which is guaranteed, I take it. I get a hit. They manage to get 2. They don't wipe me out. They couldn't wipe me out. The last key falls. It goes over there. It's game over. Which makes me kind of happy. Yes, I spent a lot of time working my way through this. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I don't have anything else prepped. I was counting on, like, a week's time But this was kind of exciting, actually. And it does show, I know that there's a way in Here I Stand for the Turks to win by fairly early in the game. I don't know if it's the first or second turn. I think it's the Turks. They're in a position where they're kind of close and they can kind of push things. In this case, the Spaniards just got such an edge and were able to grab things so nicely. I may play it again because this fell so fast. On the other hand, I may try to play something that is, you know, that I don't need to read a lot of rules on. Either way, it's Thursday right now. It's pretty low chance that I'm going to make a decision either way. If I do make a decision before I go dancing, it's probably that I replay this again and give this yet another shot. Because, you know, I went through a lot of work reading the rules, sorting the counters and everything, and I got such a quick victory off of it. But I do have better ideas of what's going on and everything. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm kind of happy with the experience I got this time, even though it was real fast. It does show you, though, that, like, Spain is the most potent of the nations. In particular because the Netherlands, which is going to become a real bogeyman for them later on, is completely under their control on the first turn. Did I fuck up? Yeah. I mean, the Protestants had the English set things up down here. The Protestants could have done their revolt there and could have taken 2 keys instead of 1 pretty in a much easier fashion. And then we'd be going into a turn that's a lot uglier in a lot of ways than this is. So I don't know. Let me send this up. I don't feel too much of the, oh gosh, I didn't know what I was doing and therefore I blundered into this position, into this victory. There were a couple little things, you know, like again, the English could have guaranteed another key. Everybody conceivably knew that the Spanish had a large hand of cards at this point that they could have forced their way into this kind of victory. But nobody knew the extent of how powerful their hand actually was. Did anybody make... I mean, you know, the Holy Roman Empire joining the war, that definitely made things easier. It you know, the Spanish wouldn't have been able to conquer Istanbul with a regular with the full Turkish army down there. They would have had to concentrate on trying to do stuff down here or whatever, and just no way that they could have gotten this automatic victory. So things really fell into Spain's lap here. But it's the kind of thing that would happen if you had like one player who really thought out the situation and was able to convince maybe a newer player as the Holy Roman Empire to help them out on this. You know, hey, you really want Budapest, man. You get a victory point every turn. It's the kind of thing, you know, that if somebody does take advantage of that, people kind of frown on it. But it isn't a terrible argument. Like, if Spain had made themselves the bunny, by a term I use to mean like the runaway leader type situation, just something that came from my Buffalo gaming group, that provides a lot of cover for everyone else. And there's not a whole hell of a lot that the HRE would be doing against them. Their choice of picking the Protestants, I feel was a good one given what they did, because what they're looking at is, yeah, we'll start helping the Protestants more, and Spain's going to be in the lead, and the people who can really deal with Spain are the Protestants, maybe the French, maybe the English, but it's not really me. So it becomes not my problem that I created this. And, you know, from a historical point of view, of course, Spanish Habsburgs and the Imperial Habsburgs did often work together quite a bit. They never ended up really on the other side of each other, even though they had different aims in a lot of ways. So, you know, you can kind of justify everything, both in terms of the gameplay situation and also the historical situation. By the way, somebody brought up, the designer, I guess, noted, and I didn't reread the designer's notes, that the particular projection on the map is supposed to be kind of Philip II's view of the world. I don't know how much that's really true. I mean, Spain is awfully small if that's the case. It's really one that's designed to allow lots and lots of spaces where there's interesting stuff going on. And nothing too interesting is happening in Spain. Lots of interesting stuff is happening in the Netherlands and in France. England needs a decent amount of spaces. You know, you can't just do this with like 3 or 4 spaces for England and 6 spaces for France and 4 or 5 for the Dutch. I don't remember exactly what Here I Stand used. But in terms of like, you need this distortion for the game to work more than you need it. Like, I really don't believe that Philip II had a distorted view of Europe in any sense of the word. Although his focus, obviously, you know, these are key areas that Philip was interested in impacting. And other places, not so much. But what that actually does is it creates something that I'm not sure. It's kind of weird, okay? Definitely the Netherlands was very difficult to move around in, etc., which means all those extra spaces make sense. If you just look at the graph of the map, they actually explain the gameplay more. I'm not so sure how much the French map really makes sense in the Wars of Religion. I don't know why, but my impression is that the Wars of Religion there are a much more fluid thing than they are in the Netherlands. And then, you know, here, it's certainly easier to move over here than it is on the Dutch area. So these huge spaces kind of make sense. Now, it's not like the terrain is particularly easy to move through or anything, but rather that there aren't tons of fortresses all over the place. They put, you know, the things that actually are placed as fortresses in the game are not the extent of the amount of fortifications that exist throughout these areas. I don't know. I'm just babbling at this point. So let me load this up, and I'll try to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do. Don't know what it is.